So let's talk about Midsommar.
I told you that I want to go to that festival in Sweden.
No, you said it would be cool to go.
Yeah, and then I got the opportunity and I decided
Look, I
to
don't
do
mind
it.
you going. I just wish you would have told me. That's all.
Directed by the great Ari Aster, who directed one of my favorite movies of last year, Hereditary. One of the best horror movies of the decade. Probably the scariest movie I've ever seen. Or at least recently. Going into Midsommar, I had very high expectations. I love some of the actors like Florence Pugh, Jack Rayner is good, and Will Poulter's great as well. So Midsommar had a lot going for it going into it, but I feel like it lets down in some parts, and it also exceeds in some parts. And I'll get into that more when I talk about spoilers, but I think Midsommar is a great follow-up to Hereditary, in that with Hereditary, I don't really want to compare these two films because they're so different, but they're a lot alike at the same time. So with Hereditary, it's just visceral, 2 hours, go, breakneck pace, scare after scare. And Midsommar just kind of like takes its time, and you get like little blips here and there of like weird shit, and it's like very just like stretched out, and it takes its time. It really does. It's over 2.5 hours long, I think. I feel like with Ari Aster's cinematography, it really shines more so in this movie than Hereditary because of all these sweeping shots and like different angles of like this wide landscape of this Swedish cult grounds, I guess. But it really just has this odd element. Everything's like blown out, like all the whites are really, really white, and all the colors pop, and it's so different for just a horror movie in general just to have bright. You never associate like horror movies with anything like outside in the daytime. I feel like this movie is scarier because it's in the day, if that makes sense. Like most of it, like 90% of the movies during the day. I think Midsommar is definitely not as good as Hereditary, but it's its own thing, I guess. It's very solid, doing its own thing. So I really want to talk. I need to talk about spoilers with this. So movie starts, and like the first 15 minutes, you see Florence Pugh's character, Danny. Her sister, you're introduced to her sister, and she's like bipolar, and you're already getting like hints that something's not right. And she has a boyfriend, and obviously, like Ari Aster said, this is like a breakup movie. At its core, you see this like the boyfriend being like, oh, she's gonna be fine. Like this happens all the time. She's bipolar. She'll get over it. And then we see like one of the most disturbing images like in the first like 15 minutes of a film I've ever seen, where you see the tubes on the car being run, and they're all the way up. The tubes are being fed into her parents' room, and then you see another tube like on her face, and she ends up killing herself and her parents. And it hard cuts to Danny like weeping like in Hereditary, a very, very similar shot of just like a flat shot of like a woman just weeping. Like it had the same thing when, spoilers for Hereditary, Charlie dies. Yeah, first 15 minutes disturbing as hell, and then it kind of slows down. It kind of like introduces you to all these characters, which I feel like I don't know if it's necessary to have this next 20 to 30 minutes maybe of them talking about going to Sweden. I feel like this is probably my least favorite part of the movie, is when like they're deciding on, I guess it's more to do with the breakup aspect of the film, where you got to set up this relationship, you got to strengthen it. But I feel like it could have been structured better, because it's very odd to have this first 30 45 minutes just be here, and then just jump into Sweden. I wish it kind of just stayed, like I just went right into Sweden right after. But it's just like a minor gripe with the movie, I guess. But yeah, so they get to Sweden, immediately do shrooms, and immediately Danny has a bad trip. And it's one of the weirdest depictions of like a trip scene in a movie. Like, and it's like Will Poulter is in this movie to be funny, basically. So when he's tripping, like he's like, can everybody lay down? Lay down. Like, he's like freaking out, and you see Danny like run away at one point, and she's like, people are laughing at her. Yeah, she's like straight up not having a good time, basically. Danny has a bad trip, and like, I'm not gonna get into every plot point of this movie. I just want to talk about like what happens. But over the course of the movie, progressively weird shit happens. Like, there's always like drugs being taken. There's always like some weird ritual going on. By far the weirdest of them is when, because this Swedish, this cult, so you're supposed to like kill yourself basically when you hit 72, I think it is. It shows two old people jump off like a 40-foot cliff, and yeah, it shows it all, and it's very, very odd. It's so different to Hereditary because it's not, Midsommar is not scary, but it's definitely, it just makes you like ugh. I don't know how to describe that. It's very unsettling imagery because the old guy that jumps doesn't die, so they bash his head in with like a giant wood thing, and it's like, huh, okay. But yeah, everyone like freaks out at that point. And crazy shit just keeps happening. It's extremely entertaining. Like, there's like certain sections of this movie where like there's like little things going on and little conflicts, like when Will Poulter pees on the tree that is like the tree of like their ancestors, and then he ends up getting killed, and then somebody wears his face as a mask to kill the other guy who's trying to steal the book, or like read the book or take pictures of their book or whatever, and that's not cool. So all these plot points, this is my other gripe with the movie. I feel like these characters could have definitely been written like smarter, because none of them, especially the boyfriend makes sense because he's being so naive and dumb, because he's like a bad boyfriend. When Danny is like, why would like, there's the two characters from London. The boyfriend leaves the girlfriend there because the truck doesn't have enough room, but obviously he wouldn't leave her there. But when Danny brings that up to her boyfriend, he's just like, yeah, don't worry about it. Like, he's probably fine, like whatever. But there's obviously something going on, and none of the characters other than Danny and maybe the two London people like really like act on it, I guess. And the other main characters get wasted basically. The last few scenes of the movie are some of the weirdest shit. We see Jack Rayner, the boyfriend. There's this girl that flirts with him throughout the movie, and he ends up like having sex with her. And there's this like group of old ladies as he's doing it, and one of the old ladies like starts like pushing him along and stuff, and it's just like, what is happening right now? And then you see Florence Pugh become the May Queen after she like dances the longest or whatever. Because she's the May Queen, she picks who dies, like basically, so there's 9 people that have to die, and she has to pick out of like 3, and she ends up picking her boyfriend because she finds out that like he's having sex with the other girl. Like, they have a bear, there's a bear introduced, they end up gutting the bear and putting Jack Rayner in the bear thing, and they have 9 people inside of the house, and they burn down, they kill everyone. Well, there's already a couple dead, but yeah, they end up burning him alive in a bear thing, and it cuts to Florence Pugh and she smiles, and then the movie ends. And then you're just like, well, that was a movie. It's one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen that got like a wide release. Definitely. Especially from A24, because A24 consistently puts out great movies, but this one's like, it's extremely weird. I didn't love Midsommar, but I can definitely appreciate it. It's so odd, it's so trippy, it's so disturbing. It's just its own thing. I love it for that. But as a film, I think it's a 7 out of 10. Like a strong 7. It's definitely not Hereditary. Yeah, 7 out of 10.
You look so guilty right now because you know.
We only do this every 90 years. I was most excited for you to come.
So I also saw Spider-Man Far From Home.
Everywhere I go, I see his face. I just really miss him.
Yeah, I miss him too. I don't think Tony would have done what he did if he didn't know that you were going to be here after he was gone.
John Watts is back directing. Tom Holland, Zendaya, the chubby best friend guy, I don't remember his name. Spider-Man Homecoming, top 5 Marvel movies, it's great. Of course, I'm going to be excited for this one. Of course, Jake Gyllenhaal's in this one. He plays Mysterio. I'm not going to spoil this movie. They do with this movie, and Spider-Man in general, I think it's very interesting and completely different from like other Spider-Man things. It's kind of like, this is like an obvious opinion, but it's very Marvel the way they handle Spider-Man. I've never been like the biggest Spider-Man fan. These two movies are basically comedies. I think Far From Home is funnier. There's a lot more interesting jokes and how they incorporate them in the movie. Like Homecoming is great, but I feel like Far From Home is better in the comedic, but not so good. And I didn't care for much of the action in this film, and I feel like they didn't really take Spider-Man in any new direction until the end. The end credit stuff is great. I love how they set up the next incarnation of whatever they do next. End credits are fine, but no spoilers. I'm not going to spoil this, but the action isn't really anything interesting. I feel like it's just Marvel, and it's not. They didn't really. They had all these beautiful locations they filmed on, and they don't really like showcase them very well, I guess. And it's just kind of a waste. But as a whole, this movie, of course, it does its job. It follows up Endgame great. It answers a lot of questions, like the blip, because people just came back 5 years later and they're the same age and then high school and all this stuff. It's very weird, and they do a really good job of explaining it, but I feel like the movie isn't really too much more than that. It's just another fun Marvel movie. The best parts of this movie are Mysterio. I don't want to say anything about what happens with this character, but Jake Gyllenhaal, of course, is a great actor. He's going to shine in any role, basically. He adds a lot to this movie. I feel like without him in it, it'd just be like a standard 5 out of 10 Marvel movie, but with him in it, it's more like a strong 6, I would think. Yeah, Mysterio's kind of sick in this movie, and a lot of the scenes with him are by far the best. And all the other things, like Zendaya is fine, Happy is fine. I just feel like it definitely could have had a lot more like creativity with the other than the Mysterio scenes. Like the straight up action scenes are just kind of they're very forgettable. I kind of don't even remember like half the stuff, and some of the things they do in this movie are really stupid, but it's a Marvel movie, so I don't really take it too seriously. But yeah, this movie's a 6 out of 10. Better than Homecoming. They're good, and they're both equal. They're pretty much equal in my opinion.
New plan.
So yeah, those are the movies. Hopefully I see some good shit soon. There's nothing yeah. See you in the next one.